And we are back. This is Warning Shots here on CKUW 95.9 FM. Warning Shots is CKUW's independent international news show. And I'm your host, Scott Price. And you just heard from a tribe called Red. That's a track called Bread and Cheese off their first track off of their newest record called Nation to Nation. So go check out a tribe called Red. Really interesting music. But joining me right now on the line is John Schertow, from manager, creator, editor of Intercontinental Cry. Hello, John.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Awesome. Well, as always, it's always a pleasure having you on the show, John.
For sure.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a bit about, there's this fundraising campaign that Intercontinental Cry is right now in the midst of. So talk a bit about that.
All right. Well, we're trying to raise some funds to keep our work going and to set ourselves up for for some future plans that we have that we're in the process of putting together. We actually got hit pretty hard earlier this year with a $1,200 bill after a deal we made with a major radio station in the U.S. fell through. So we got stuck with a $1,200 bill that we can't pay.
Oh man.
Yeah, and on top of that, we're also just out of funds to keep the website going and to pay our monthly bills. So we turned to Indiegogo.com to help us cover all that.
Yeah. So I mean, so talk a bit about the fundraising campaign. So this is to not only to keep it going, but then also to pay the debt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we literally can't pay it on our own. We're we don't get any funding from governments or corporations or any private foundations. We're 100% reliant on our readers. And without their help on this, I fear that it's only a matter of time before IC gets shut down.
Right.
The fundraiser now has 8 days left as of today. We're pretty close to the end, but I actually undershot how much we actually needed. But we're trying to raise at least $2,400. That'll pretty much cover everything to keep us online and to keep me from getting sued from the printing company because I can't pay. But the goal here too is to keep us online and to keep us doing what we're doing. First and foremost, starting with our latest ebook, our magazine actually called People, Land, Truth 2013, which is a anniversary ebook, IC's 9th anniversary ebook / print magazine, which is going to highlight about 50 of the best articles that we've written over the past 12 months.
Oh wow!
It's going to be solid. It's being professionally edited. It's being edited very well. Actually, I was quite surprised to see how much work is going into it by a professional magazine editor who's donating her services to us.
Oh, wonderful!
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that, but we need to be able to stay online. To be able to continue this work. We also have another magazine coming up in the next couple of days called Communications in Conflict, which is essentially a touchstone into the concepts of psychological warfare, which is something I think that people really need to have a strong understanding about when dealing with a lot of the conflicts that are being thrown at us today, and these strategies that governments and corporations and NGOs are using to undermine us and to take advantage of our movements, indigenous and non-indigenous alike. We need to empower ourselves, and this is a starting point for that empowerment process.
Yeah, completely. Now let's talk about. I mean, with this campaign. So, I mean, if people go to intercontinentalcry.org is where they can find it.
Yeah.
And then, or if you go to Indiegogo, it's called People, Land, Truth. Correct?
Yep.
And then, so let's just break it down a bit. Like, so let's say if you want to give $50. Is there incentives and things that one could get depending on how much you give?
We have a bunch of incentives set up here. The $50 one, for example, they would get copies of our first 2 magazines and a couple of postcards. There's different levels of stuff we have here, because like we have a lot of magazines left over and we can't really do anything with them. So we'll happily give somebody a copy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have other magazines coming up too. If somebody donates 100, they can get all the magazines that we've published previously and the 2 we have coming up. I think too it's important to say that it's not just about keeping IC online. It's about defending the right of people to know exactly what's going on around the world. Because a lot of the news and analysis that we provide can't really be found anywhere else. Like people don't really realize that there isn't just one conflict dam in Brazil, being the Belamonte Dam. There's 30 major conflict dams around the world, and we're trying to highlight all these struggles and to provide a key analysis so people can empower themselves to act in solidarity and to strengthen their own movements and their own activism so that we can deal with the problems in front of us. There's our work is pretty important in that respect. And we need people's help to be able to continue this work, especially with what we have planned coming up. We're putting together a formal budget so that we can start sending people out around the world to investigate situations. Like, for example, you had Hannibal Rhodes on recently.
Yes, yesterday, last week.
Our plan is if we can raise the funds, and I think we can if we can, especially if our readers, show that they have our back, to send somebody, for example, to Inner Mongolia or to Tibet to get first-hand information on what exactly is happening, to the Tibetans and to the Uyghurs and the other indigenous peoples that are being targeted here, because that's something that nobody's really paying attention to, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
But there's, so that's the tip of the iceberg. We also want to be able to provide our writers with compensation for their work. We can't do that now. Right now, IC is run on basically a zero budget.
Mm-hmm.
So we're hoping to change that. But from now until then, we need our readers to get our backs, and general allies and people who want to support true independent media.
Yeah. I think there's you're very right there, and just for the listeners, like for instance, if you go to Indiegogo.com and you look up People, Land, Truth, for instance, if you give $5, you do get a thanks from John from Intercontinental Cry, but I know there's at least 50 people listening right now at the very least, $5 each. It's pretty negligible, and that would make a huge contribution to something like Intercontinental Cry. You know what I mean?
For sure, it would. It would put us over the top, I think.
Yeah, but just to talk a bit more about the media thing, because I was a colleague of mine here at the station who he's since gone on to do different work, but he used to be on the show with me, Alex Patterson. He turned me on to Intercontinental Cry, and then I started checking it out. And I think the first time you and I, John, had an interaction is we're talking about what was going on in Mali and the indigenous groups there with the Tuareg. Yeah. And then when we were conversing, I was like, I figured, okay, well, he's got to be somewhere, who knows where, maybe in Europe or maybe somewhere in Central South America. And then when we were conversing, you're like, actually, I'm based in Winnipeg. And it just totally blew my mind. And I think it's also something that shows, it's hard work that you're doing. It's important work, but it also shows what can be done if people just get behind these sorts of things.
For sure.
And especially with Intercontinental Cry, places like CKUW, if people just get behind it, it can grow into something that's really quite incredible. And to talk about the media landscape, I think the point was made, and I think you posted this, either it's from you that did this or it was someone else, that even in this quote-unquote alternative medias, there's very little coverage of what's going on with Indigenous issues, right?
Yeah, I actually just made an infographic highlighting that, where I took 7 prominent alternative news organizations like Truth Out and IPS News and a bunch of others, and compared it to what IC produces on a month-to-month basis. And on average, we produce 25 times more news on Indigenous struggles than anyone else. In some cases, 50 times more, which is bizarre. Like, especially when they're dedicated to exposing corporate fraud and malfeasance and crimes against peoples. They cover almost nothing that we're covering. And in several cases, even with the mainstream media, like, we're covering stories a year before anybody else.
Yeah.
It's disturbing, to say the least. Like, I'm glad that we're able to put this out, but the fact that nobody else is doing it is shocking. This is the spirit of IC. This is why I started it was because of this massive vacuum, a vacuum that persists even now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also why I've been working so hard to make IC grow, because the global movement of Indigenous peoples has grown exponentially over the past 10 years. Back when I started, I was aware of maybe 50 nations that were defending their lands and rights and demanding that corporations, governments, and NGOs hold themselves to account. Now there's over 500, and we've documented all of them.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work, and I very much hope that we can continue it for years to come.
Yeah, no, I hope so too. I mean, just for the listeners, like, I kind of made this point earlier on in the show that through Intercontinental Cry and looking at those things, and then being able to look like using it as a base point and then doing other research. I mean, I've gotten to cover issues and news that I probably wouldn't have been able to. Like one example was the thing going on in one of the dams by Tahoe, the mining company Tahoe Resources, and what they were doing in Guatemala.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting because it was through IC that I got that information, and then I tracked down some people to talk to, and I did a series of interviews about the whole situation there. And it was very funny because someone about 2 weeks after I did the original interview, they posted something on Facebook about it. And they tagged me in it, and I was like, yeah, I covered this. It was from Al Jazeera. I was like, yeah, I covered this like 2 weeks ago. Here's the link to it. And then they were like, what? where are you getting your info? I'm like, well, here you go. This is where I got it from, right? Yeah. So I think that's one example of what Intercontinental Cry does. And like you said, I mean, even in some cases, years go by before this gets attention in other places. I mean, and it is bizarre. It is bizarre that, I think even within a lot of alternative media, there is still a concentration on a certain kind of politics and certain kinds of issues. Yeah. I do appreciate a lot of their work too, like Truth Out, Truth Dig, Real News Network, Democracy Now. I like all those, of course, but it is a certain kind of politics. It's certain kind of issues that do get through more often than anything else. Yeah. So I think that's where Intercontinental Cry comes in, because it really fills a gap that is in many cases like a Grand Canyon,
For real.
Yeah.
It's prevalent, everywhere, all over the world. And, like, I cannot even tell you how many times I hear people say either to me or I read it online, nobody knows about us. We're living in isolation. We're being killed. Our homes are being burned. We're being shot at from helicopters. We're being drowned. Nobody's listening to us. The UN, NGOs, Amnesty International, nobody. So we're for them. Just as much as we're for the nations and peoples and movements and networks that are prominent and getting tens of thousands of dollars of funding. We're dealing with everybody on an equal plane here, because it's all one struggle. Mm-hmm. and it all needs to be supported. We don't get to pick and choose who we want to support here. Because lives and cultures and legacies and languages and histories and futures are on the line here. This is a life and death struggle. And it concerns all of us, because if Indigenous peoples are off the table, then guess who's next? So
mm-hmm.
So there's of course so much more here to discuss. But it's also like what Indigenous peoples are doing, the models, decolonized ways of thinking and ways of seeing and living that people need to know about as well. And we've kind of lacked in that way because there's so many emergencies that we've had to cover. But this is something that we want to get into more in the future as well. The concept of good living, for example, which is just a beautiful, beautiful concept. And just replacing the colonial models that have never worked for us, like the development model, or just the whole logic of capitalism, which is a bad joke. So there's a lot to consider, a lot to do, and a lot to learn.
Yes. So again, so either you can go to Indiegogo.com and you look up People, Land, Truth. You'll find it there. Intercontinentalcry.org. You can also find it. I believe it's on the right-hand side of the page. You'll see the fundraising campaign.
Yeah.
The link to that. There's 8 days left. So the listeners, like I'm saying, if who's ever out there, you can like $5. I know because there's no official numbers on CKUW, but I have a good idea of who's out there at any one time, and we probably got at least at the very least 50 people listening right now. $5 is negligible, and that would go a long way to keeping Intercontinental Cry online and doing what they do and doing what this work that John and the volunteer staff that the volunteer help. Which is, I don't know. There's nothing else that can replace Intercontinental Cry at this point.
I do. Not sounding arrogant, but I do think it's important that we. I can't stress the fact how important it is that we be allowed to keep this going.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with what we have planned. Like we're only getting started here. Sure,
right.
Even though we've been around for 9 years, we got a lot more to do.
Yeah, and I think especially the idea of having people out there going to the situations and reporting and seeing what's happening. I think that would be amazing to see.
It would. That's what I wanted for years, but I never had the skills or the capacity to really envision what exactly we'd need for that.
Right.
I'm a high school dropout. I don't know anything about this kind of stuff, but now I do. I've after 9 years of continuous writing and research and just observing and learning from other people. Now I'm at the point where I can carry this stuff forward. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Right. No. And I, like I said, just for listeners, I'm going to support for sure. I hope you do too. It's such a great. It would pain me to see Intercontinental Cry have to shut down on the internet. Like I said, there's so many great things, and just opening up your mind to the different issues and things that are happening, right? Even, like I said, even within alternative media, it's still, some of it's still pretty focused on very specific kind of things. And that's, I don't know why that is. I think there's a lot of reasons for it, but that is the situation in a lot of cases. But Intercontinental Cry, I hope the listeners go and support it. I will be. I'll be donating, hopefully in the next couple of days, to the fundraiser. So
cool.
Now, just before we go, I just want to get it just a little bit. So you're planning on doing another this communications and conflict, right? That's the new one you're developing, right? Yeah,
that's going to be out in hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
I just have to finish the cover, and then it'll be ready to go. And then we have People, Land, Truth, 2013, which is going to be probably finished in July or next month. Sorry. And we have another one coming up at the end of the year too, if all goes well. That's Indigenous Struggles 2013 to follow up the 2012 version. Dispatches from the Fourth World. Which is an overview of 300 key stories that were broke throughout the year. The good and the bad news all summed up in 30 pages. Both of them are pretty solid, and they'll be available both online and for print. I think because of the funding situation that we have, the upcoming magazines are only going to be available through donation. The previous ones we made are free, and the print versions, of course, are also for a modest donation. We can ship them out to you, or send you a stack or just one to read before you go to bed.
Yeah.
if you want to read that kind of stuff before you go to bed, some of it's pretty intense.
Yeah. But again, I encourage the listeners, so go to Indiegogo.com. People Land Truth is where you can find it, or intercontinentalcry.org. Help keep this extremely important news source online. So John, as always, it's always great to talk with you and have you on. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, and thank you for your support as well.
Yes, no, I mean this is the kind of work you do is definitely the kind of work that I see. It's sort of really goes well with what we try to do at CKUW as well. I mean, if not only news, but even in terms of culture, in terms of music and different things that CKUW tries to present to people, and definitely what you do at Intercontinental Cry is, it's kind of it's definitely dovetailed. You know what I mean? So
for sure,
yeah. But anyways, but thank you as always coming on, John, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.